All right, I'm feeling psychedelic. Are you, Max? You feeling psychedelic?
Yeah, I'm feeling it. You know, I'm feeling the psychedelia coursing through my veins, purple haze all through my mind.
Well, that's good because we have a psychedelic episode here, and this psychedelic episode is brought to you by the sunexchange.com/orange pill and swanbitcoin.com/orange pill. The Sun Exchange, of course, is the place where you go to monetize sunshine. How psychedelic is that?
Yeah, it's beautiful. The sun shines and you are streamed sats as God intended.
Right. I'm going to read for you the definition of psychedelic. And I think I found this on Wikipedia. Okay, let's trust them. The term psychedelic is derived from the Greek words, which is a symbol. I'm going to show it on screen. So all our Greek people in the Orange Pill Podcast Telegram group could tell you if this is confirmed. The translation is psyche, soul, or mind. And then here's the other Greek word, and that means delun, to manifest. Hence, mind manifesting. The implication being that psychedelics can develop unused potentials of the human mind. And as it goes on to say that ego dissolution is really important to psychedelics. What they help your ego dissolve.
Oh yeah, that's all key on the path to some form of enlightenment, is to, you know, drop your ego by the wayside, and only then can you begin to take in the psychic reality. And so it's a powerful few sentences.
And you know, this whole thing, this opening here, this psychedelic opening. And I'm hoping like maybe we actually look psychedelic too. That's why I have the shirt on. But the psychedelic thing is Robert Breedlove responded on Twitter to somebody who was asking why there's a whole psychedelic thing about so many in the Bitcoin space. And first he responded with these two tweets. Viewing humanity as one organism, perhaps the state is its default mode network, and psychedelics produce radical psychological transformation by disrupting the default mode network of the individual. So perhaps Bitcoin and psychedelics are more closely related than we think. That was him referring back to a July 2020 tweet he had sent. And then he updated that with psychedelics disrupt the brain's default mode network, an entrained pattern of habitual actions. At the collective level, the default mode network of humanity is the state, a complex of ritual and procedure binding society. Bitcoin is a psychedelic disruptor to the state. You responded, but what do you have to say to that now, Max?
Well, you know, Robert Breedlove is into this whole kind of digging deep into the metaphysical world of Bitcoin. And I just saw something on Twitter. This just kind of fits into this by a guy or a person goes by Aeon BTC. AEON BTC. Bitcoin is an emergent property of nature. The internet is as well. The method in which they function is something nature has been doing since the beginning of time. So the reason I point that out is that the Bitcoin is not an invention so much as it is a discovery. And the internet is also a discovery. And even discovering the subconscious mind and the unconscious mind was something that was Freud did, and Carl Jung. That was considered a discovery at the time. Really. And so we've been probing into this vast conscious, unconscious, what I call, or what Jung calls the global unconscious, for more than 100 years. And as our tools get more sophisticated, so too does our voyage into the inner space, the metaphysical. And Bitcoin is a tool that we've discovered to probe deeper into the collective unconscious. And what we're finding there is what Robert Breedlove is suggesting, that the primary unit of organization is not the state, and it's not pretty much anything anyone's been used to for millennia. So it's a disruptor in that sense. It's a cognitive disruptor, it's a cerebral disruptor, it's a societal disruptor. It's a psychedelic revelation in the sense of what you're saying is the classic definition of psychedelia, of psychedelics. And the results are profound, and they require to further that point about ego. The ego can be a huge inhibitor, which would be the opposite of a disrupting process. And you see this all the time in Bitcoin Twitter, people who are, for example, in academia, where it's the ego battles of egos more than anything else. And they have really, really hard time getting to understand or grokking Bitcoin because they're bred to be egocentric in that sense. And so they're just having a really, really tough time. They weren't prepared for it. And a few of them are trying to grapple with it, and maybe a couple have moved over, but for the most part, all of their models are shattered, as Michael Saylor would say, and that applies to all the economic, financial, academic, societal, all models of cognition, all models of consciousness are shattered with Bitcoin. It's a new tool to explore the meta universe of the global unconscious. So naturally, it's going to be transformative.
You also think of, when you think of psychedelics, you think of going on a journey. And that journey is like you leave all of the default mode that you're on, the preconceptions, and you go on a journey beyond what you thought was possible, right? And, Westerners, I guess we use LSD. And but a lot of cultures already have, they go on these journeys, right? With we've talked about the trip sitter and the shamans. They help people, on their psychedelic journey as they're releasing their ego is dissolved, with various natural drugs available. I mean, I don't think they would have grown. Nature wouldn't provide psychedelics if it weren't meant to be a part of a clue left in the matrix of this game, this video game, this this.
Well, it's an inner journey, right? It's an inner journey. The psychedelics, and so getting rid of the ego is part of that journey. Imagine if you were to walk out of your house completely naked. Right? It would be a very different experience. People would look at you very differently. You would look completely different to everybody because their preconception of you would be utterly different. And your preconception of what people also would be different because of the way they're reacting. And you are essentially have not changed. You are exactly who you were before you left the house, except you just got rid of your clothes. Now you're naked. Okay, so psychedelia is saying, okay, I'm going to get rid of my ego and I'm going to walk out into the public space naked, in a sense, of my preconceptions, my biases. And that is a journey. It's a journey of discovery. And it gets deeper from there because we are the product of conditioning. And that conditioning runs extraordinarily deep due to the industrialization of conditioning. The conditioning we used to all be subjected to would be from religions, from society. But they were, comparatively, you could say, a light conditioning versus the hard conditioning that comes post-industrialization. where we are eating processed cheese, we're watching television, we're hooked into the internet, all centralized hard conditioning, and which has resulted in a death of the soul, a certain soul deathness that you feel it, wherever you go. People are at odds with themselves. We're having an existential crisis as a species. But Bitcoin, basically is a return to the path of enlightenment, or the psychedelic path, and to have the courage to leave your ego by the side and to simply experience life as it is, not through your preconceptions and biases. Most people perceive virtually every second of their sleeping and waking conscious state and unconscious state through the filter of a bias or a preconception. And so they're getting reality secondhand, because those preconceptions are inculcated into their mind through outside forces of industrialization and corporatization. So you really have a very, very few, if in fact you're able to strip that away, you would stand out. If you can strip it away artfully and get up on stage and create fantastic stories about it, you would become a very highly paid comedian. But now even the comics, who are like the modern day shamans, are being shut down because they're revealing too much truth. It's not because they're hurting anyone's feelings. That's not what's going on. The comedians are being shut down because they are revealing too much of the truth, and that could cause an insurrection. So the industrialization, the centralization of the soul destroying industrialization, is flipping out.
Well, in terms of Bitcoin as a psychedelic disruptor, to the state is what Robert Breedlove said. But yeah, I think it's also to yourself. And if you think of psychedelic sort of as it's depicted in art and video and music, there's a whole time element to it, right? Like there's a sort of disruption of your default mode in terms of how you look at the time around you and how time is flowing. And so you start to see that with Bitcoin. It does that to anybody who holds Satoshis for a while. First of all, your perception of time changes. And we've discussed that over and over, that you go from high time preference to low time preference, and you feel it. It's something you physically feel. It manifests in your mind. It's mind manifesting. Like it
has a magnetic force. Everyone's had that experiment as a kid where you put some iron filings on a sheet of paper randomly, and then you have a magnet underneath that sheet of paper, and all the patterns seem to magically appear. And that's what Bitcoin does, that to our unconscious mind. It reveals the patterns that have always been there, but have been scrambled by the industrialization. The Orange Pill podcast really is all based on psychedelia. The song Orange Pill is sung by Sean Lennon, who's a noted psychedelic rock performer. They perform in the genre called psychedelia, and that's an established form of rock music. Clearly the Beatles had their Sgt. Pepper, Lucy in the Sky with Diamond phase, and that was directly into the psychedelics of that era. And Sean Lennon is his whole album. What is it? Voyage to the Moon of the Dark Phobos in the parallel multiverse to find my G-string that I snapped while performing in Paris, I think is the name of the tune. And so we're been on this psychedelic inner journey now for 35 episodes. A lot of people have seen all 35 episodes. Like, the scales have been removed from their eyes. They're beginning to see life without bias, without preconceptions. And it's scary at first, but then it's like perfectly fine, really, because that's life. Life is life.
Well, and the biggest psychedelic impact you see from Bitcoin is the ego dissolution. Like, so many billionaires and guys who think they have the biggest cocks in the room, and they walk in and they're like, hey, I'm from the billionaire fiat world and I'm here to fix Bitcoin. Like they all enter it that way. They all think that they're going to fix it and they're bigger than Bitcoin or they're bigger than the community. And quickly then you find out, I mean, Michael Saylor is a good example. In 2014, he looked at Bitcoin and he was like, I'm better than Bitcoin. I'm a better coder. I'm a better programmer. I'm a better engineer than this. I'm smarter than Bitcoin. And then he comes back as a philosopher, and like respecting Bitcoin, respecting the community.
Right. While he was ignoring Bitcoin, Bitcoin was not ignoring him. While he was putting it to the side, Bitcoin was working its way in.
Bitcoin was not intimidated by him dismissing Bitcoin. It just like, okay, I'll see you soon. You'll be back. Don't worry.
Because ultimately it got in. It got behind the ego firewall and started to go to work on his unconscious mind, as it always does, as it always will. Everyone who's big Bitcoin basher today will be buying Bitcoin at over $500,000 shortly.
Well, they won't have any choice. They have to get rid of their ego. And, high time preference and fragile ego go together. Like our fiat dark ages, those two go together. Those are totally linked together. Look on Twitter, right? It's looking into the stream of consciousness of the fiat dark ages, of all the people who are so insecure. And why are they so insecure? Because they have huge, fragile egos. And the fact that there are too many people out there who don't abide by their, how they want to view the world.
Right. It's omnipotence versus impotence. So omnipotence is driven by fiat money. I mean, think about it. Like Christine Lagarde, she runs the European Central Bank now, and she's holding court every few days about how there are no problems that can't be solved by her printing more euros.
Yes.
She has a God complex.
Yes.
Which is typical in a fiat money system where you can print infinite amounts of paper money and versus impotence, which is essentially everyone's impotent at the altar of Bitcoin. Bitcoin has the power to completely change men's minds in toto, instantly.
Mind manifesting. So, that kind of sounds also similar to Buddhism and mindfulness. And it also, in the second half, after the interview, we'll talk about, Aristotle. Also, his ultimate good, he believed for a human was happiness, to seek happiness. And it was in ancient Greek, what happiness meant was a sort of mindfulness of being at one like that. That was the ultimate good. And it wasn't wealth. It wasn't Lambo. It wasn't that sort of thing, because those were only, you were seeking a Lambo in order to be happy. You weren't seeking the Lambo. Like the ultimate end goal is happiness. So, I think these are all going together where you're if you're able to rid yourself of, look at the notion of have fun staying poor. People think it's like a toxic behavior by Bitcoiners, but that is with their time preference and getting rid of their ego. A lot of the fragile egos need these expensive cars or need a McMansion or need these, fiat goods that is outside of them, right? It's like, look, I am good because I have this car, but you're not that car. You're you, right? So Bitcoiners are like, they don't seek any possessions because they're confident. Their ego has dissolved.
Well, it's a low time preference, high time preference thing. So the Lamborghini seeking fiat money person has the high time preference where they need instant ego gratification. Mm-hmm. They need instant gratification. Like, I need it. I need to be satisfied. And they confuse that with happiness. Whereas the low time preference Bitcoiner will say, over the next 50 years, I want to leave behind some legacy that I think was possibly Aristotle or someone of his ilk who said the wise man plants trees knowing that he won't be alive to sit under them for the shade. Right? They're thinking low time preference. They're thinking longer term, and that's the source of happiness, because you are you have as you were describing it in terms of the Aristotelian definition. It's not about instant gratification. It's about having a much different kind, which I think you're going to get into at some point.
Yeah, we'll get into it after the interview, but I think this is a good time to segue over to the interview with Paul Itoi from Sphinx.chat, because, this fits in with it. It's like, it's that whole building and just doing and making, and that cypherpunk ideology is also very crossover with this ego dissolution and just, getting down to things, not needing that constant affirmations that you're okay, I need more likes, I need more retweets, I need more of that. Like, just building it and doing it. And the importance of Bitcoin cannot be secured. You need to secure your Bitcoin in many ways, but one of them is what Sphinx.chat is providing with their new application, because to secure the freedom of trade and the freedom of spending as you wish, or you have to also secure your freedom to communicate and to assemble. And that's why, of course, it's in the founding documents of this nation, is, those are important things to all of this, to maintaining all of that, the harmony of this economy and society.
True. Fascinating story, Sphinx.chat. Fascinating.
All right. It is time now for a very exciting interview. I'm super excited about this. This is with Paul Itoi of Sphinx.chat, and that is Sphinx.chat, and where Max and I actually have an orange pill tribe going. And it's where we will be able to continue Renaissance 2.0, built on top of Layer 2.0, as we continue during the next phase of hyper Bitcoinization. So, Paul, can you explain to the audience what Sphinx.chat is, which you describe as a text application built on a payments protocol? To me, in my mind, that sounds like we're sending emails and having Telegram chat rooms over like Swift. So what are the benefits of building on a payments layer?
Yeah, so we use the Lightning Network, which is originally designed for sending payments. So you can send Satoshis instantly around the world almost for free. And so we took the same system and allow you to actually insert text messages and send those over the Lightning Network. So to the Lightning Network, you can't tell if you're actually talking to someone or paying someone. You can do both interchangeably. So if we were doing this over Sphinx.chat, I could be sending you sats every minute as we talk. If Max says something particularly funny, I could hit the boost button and tip you 1,000 sats. Those are the kinds of things that you can do when you're communicating and paying at the same time. And what I think that quote that you mentioned before was that the original internet was designed to be a free use protocol. That was the whole benefit of it. But that brings on abuse and DDoSs and all the things that we've seen and spam. But when you actually communicate on a payment protocol, those protections are all built in. So you guys have a huge Telegram group. It's a constant battle of kind of policing everyone's behavior. I think 25,000 people or something like that. So that grows linearly. So your headache as the administrator grows with every additional person. You love 100 of them, but there's probably 1% of the people who are not good actors. And so with Sphinx.chat and your tribe, you can actually set the rules so that joining costs something. You have to have some skin in the game to get in the door. And then as you post, you actually stake a certain amount of Bitcoin. It could be 1/10 of a cent. It could be a penny. It could be 50 cents. But you as the admin, if you mark that as spam, the person who posted the message loses what they staked. So it's really the game dynamics of preventing bad behavior. And we're hoping this allows groups to scale to 50,000, 100,000, million without those headaches.
And it's interesting because that is the original cypherpunks, when they were developing the predecessors to Bitcoin, what it was about was stopping spam.
Yes, exactly. I mean, we ripped off Hashcash. So this is Adam Back's Hashcash idea. It's just hard to apply that to a free protocol because you can leak around it, right? I'm just not going to choose to use that. And I'm not an expert on Hashcash, but whenever you try to shepherd some of the free traffic through a payment portal, entering your credit card information on a website, it never feels 100% natural. But with this, it's built in. You literally can't route around it. You can always require payment. And for users, it's frictionless. So you're not saying, hey, pull out your wallet and do all these things and enter a credit card number. It's just part of the Lightning Wallet functionality itself.
Right. Yeah. It's such a different model, right? Because we're getting in social media, we give them everything and we get nothing, right? So this reverses the model, right? So we're finally getting monetizing those interactions, and it just changes the whole dynamic, doesn't it?
You're not the product. That's the whole point. And if you are using a free product, someone is paying on your behalf and those incentives aren't aligned. So what we really want to do is make it so that the content that you're seeing is intentional and that you're actually you're basically in a place where other people are not trying to guide what you see.
Right. So let's talk about this value for value model. It's something that Adam Curry is always talking about. He, in fact, helped us get onto Sphinx.chat. And, you know, you have quite a deep stack, right? What is available right now, the functionality available now, and what will be available in the future. You know, it's amazing that you guys are just Cypherpunk in the way you're just building it rather than doing a lot of the stuff you already provide were promised by all these ICOs that they were going to build on their shitcoin blockchain and they were going to build these functionalities, but you guys just did it and it's built on top of Bitcoin, essentially on top of Lightning. So tell us about that value for value and what is in the actual stack of Sphinx.chat.
Yeah, so Adam, I mean, we were on the same thread and we didn't know it, but Adam was thinking about Lightning and doing deep research into Lightning. We had always looked at podcasting as a great medium to start with because podcasts are missing community. I listen to a podcast, but there's really no way to comment on it, right? I can't meet the other people who appreciate this content and I can't interact with you as the host. I can just download it every time. And so if you listen to podcast hosts, it's, hey, hit subscribe or rate my podcast, right? But that doesn't really get you the community side of what people want these days, right? And to interact around this content. And so Adam's done, I think, an amazing job of building the ability for people to donate what they feel like is the value that matches what they're getting from the host. So this is a way to give back and get back as a host from all the people that you're influencing. So if you look at what we're doing with Sphinx.chat, when you play a podcast in the Sphinx.chat player, you can actually set from 0, you don't have to pay, up to say 100 sats a minute. And so every minute that you're consuming the content, you're actually putting Bitcoin instantly, minute by minute, into the creator's pocket. And I just love that model. And I've said it before, but it actually feels different to listen to a podcast when you know you're contributing back to the host. And so when I've switched back occasionally and listened to a podcast without contributing, you kind of have this, oh, I shouldn't be doing this. I'm actually taking without giving back. So I think it actually improves the experience.
Yeah, it's I guess it's pretty censorship resistant, right? I mean, even with Substack now, the censors have arrived and they're trying to shut down people like Matt Taibbi and others. And I think they went there thinking that they would be avoiding the censors, but this seems like it's somewhat censorship proof, Paul.
Yeah, if you can't get kicked off the Lightning Network, you can't get kicked off of Sphinx.chat. So you can install it and run it on your own node. Lots of people are doing it on Umbrel, Raspberry Pi Blitz, and my node. You open a channel and you're able to communicate with anyone else who's running the software.
So, like if Donald Trump were to create a tribe and Rachel Maddow got very angry at this and started campaigning on MSNBC every night to have him taken off Sphinx.chat, is there anybody to contact that could possibly take him down? Is it that censorship resistant or what?
I can't think of a way. I was going to try to think of a joke. Maybe Ryan Gentry can kick him off, but I literally can't. If you can run a computer connected to the internet and even through Tor, then you can run a Lightning node. And if you can get your hands on some BTC, then you can play. So that's the way it works. It's pretty
Right.
good.
So you mentioned scaling earlier, and so it sounds like the scaling issues are not onersome, and you're tapping into the whole decentralization model. So it's scaling a decentralized network. That almost sounds like an oxymoron, but that's what Bitcoin has taught us, right? That a decentralized network can be scaled if you have number go up technology, because everybody's incentivized to do it. So those are the coattails that Sphinx.chat is riding, Paul.
Yeah, it really is, to me, the best use case for Lightning that I can find is I don't buy things that often. I communicate with people much more often. And so if you think about everyone who wants to chat on Sphinx Chat or join your tribe, they might not have anything that they really need to buy on the Lightning Network right now. There's stickers or certain things you can do that show off proof of concepts. But what if you really want to join in this fun and interact with people like yourselves on a tribe, then this is a motivator to go and get a My node, an Umbrel, or one of our hosted nodes. But if you're running that home node, you are running a Bitcoin full node, and you're running a Lightning node, and you're building the Lightning network out for the purposes of communicating. And so you can interact 100 times a day messaging people when you might only buy something once or twice a week. So this, I hope, will be a big motivator for people to run more full nodes.
Right. And as an admin, as you mentioned, of the Orange Pill Podcast Telegram group, we have 25,000 people in there. And we do have the scammers that come in, the high scammers. They send DMs to individual members and hope to steal their Bitcoin. Or we have trolls that jump in and, wave their weenie and hope to get some attention until they get kicked out. So you're saying basically you could just, you have a deposit that you can enable on the Sphinx Chat. So if they want to do that, you're earning money. You kick them out, you keep their sats.
Feel free to misbehave, but it's going to cost you. So that misbehavior doesn't scale very well. The problem right now is you can bot something and do this all day long. Look at Twitter and all the scams. I mean, email was the original vehicle for all this stuff, right? Remember all the spam we used to get. And so this just makes it so that there's an economic disincentive. It's the free market for attention. Hey, you can try to abuse me, but I'm going to take your scarce asset from you. And you do this everywhere, you're not going to have your Bitcoin very long. And this isn't, you can't print more of these tokens and just use more. This isn't Chuck E. Cheese where I can just get more and just do it as much as I want. You're literally losing Bitcoin in real time. So I have a feeling that's going to be a big disincentive for people.
And of course, one quick thing, follow up on that is that you also could, as the admin, you could share the Satoshis that you're earning
100%.
from the trolls, because everybody's being abused by the troll. So the troll enters the room and everybody's annoyed, but you get to share it, the booty, the bounty with everybody.
Yeah, people can. We're running a photo contest on a tribe right now called Sphinxtagram that Klaus started a while ago. So we're giving away 150,000 sats to someone who posts the best picture. And it's amazing. We're getting tons of pictures. People are just having fun with it. But that's me as a member offering a prize. People are posting pictures. It costs them 10 sats to enter the contest by posting the picture. The tribe owner's getting all of those sats for the people posting. And then I'm going to give this reward to someone on Friday, whoever has the best picture. So they get to kind of see that they're sharing. It's paying artists directly without an NFT or something like that. So we'll start small and lots of these things will blossom. We're excited to see how many creative uses people will come up with. You can do bots in these tribes. You can automate all sorts of things. There's a BTC price bot already. And so we'll make more and more of those types of tools, and hopefully more developers will jump in and start making them themselves.
Right. So when I look at an app like Clubhouse, that's really scaled pretty quickly. They've got some rooms with 1,000 or 5,000 people in there, and but that can be that's the goal, right? I mean, how hard would it be to scale to that level?
We can do it. We just it's right now we've had everyone on dedicated nodes, and then people are able to actually use a shared channel now, so you can actually have more and more users sharing the same channel, because there's only so much block space out there. If everyone had one channel and tried to onboard, you will have a huge bottleneck. And so one thing that we're testing on our end, we just released 3 weeks ago, and the testing's going great, and hopefully we'll be able to turn this on for everyone. You with a home Lightning node will be able to host your friends and family all moving through one channel off of your home node. So if they don't have their own Umbrel, they will be able to share someone else's Umbrel. I think it's a Matt Odell term, but it's the Uncle Jim model. So you're not necessarily validating everything yourself, but you're actually able to get on board right away. So, but Clubhouse specifically, if you guys look in your tribe on the upper right, you see that little phone icon up there? That icon is hooked up to an open source version of the same technology that runs behind Zoom and Clubhouse without the
Oh, so
Chinese
it's video
surveillance.
or audio. And so you could squeeze in how many people on that?
We don't know. We actually have just had 5 or 10 people on there, but people are playing with it right now. They hit a button and you're literally talking to people on the internet that you have no idea. They're just whoever's in that tribe. So, and there's a little tip button on there. I think it's only on iOS for now, but if you're talking to someone, you can actually sit there and tip them Satoshis during the call. So
it makes sense to migrate our Telegram group over to our Sphinx.chat group.
Yeah, I mean, it looks a lot like it, but you could also, every participant can not only reward the admins, but they could reward and tip. Like we get a lot of memes. People post brilliant memes of me and Max, and people could reward them, right? They could tip them.
You guys, your Telegram group has the best gift game I've ever seen. It's shockingly good, which is saying something out there on the internet. I'm going to go over to your tribe now, and I'll boost one of your comments, and I'll send back sats to this person, Toxic Bitcoiner, not to dox them, but
okay, cool.
That sounds like a handle. Do you see it pop up? You'll see it pop up.
Oh, wow. It's very generous.
Yours.
You sent him over 1,000 sats.
And then here I was paused on I think it's, I don't know how to pronounce his name, Durgigi, I think. He just joined the Psyche company. Durgigi, sorry, yeah. So I'm gonna do a quote on his podcast episode, which he did with you guys recently.
Yeah.
So I just made a quote. And now if you play that clip, I get a couple sats for making a clip.
Coming back to what you said in the beginning with the difference between physical tokens
Isn't that cool?
And letters is exactly that the map is not the...
Oh, wow.
So by annotating it for you and saying, hey, you guys have to listen to this clip, then I get a little bonus too, because I'm basically marketing a great part of your content.
Oh,
and this is what Adam's talking about with value for value. Why don't you kind of carve out the sats for your hosting provider or for your sound person or whatever it is, right? Or the people who are helping promote the podcast. So this value for value block that they support in Podcasting 2.0 lets you basically codify smart contract, whatever you want to call it. You're just basically saying, hey, here's who I want to spread the value to. But these are the kinds of things you can do. These are all just the primitives. This is Internet 94-ish, right? So these are just the pieces that need to be put in place to let you interact with the people in a new way. So hopefully if you think about Lightning, it's digitizing incentives. The internet was about digitizing words. We're passing around words on the internet. It had a huge impact. Now we're actually digitizing human incentives and sending them around in real time, cross-border. This could be somebody in Indonesia boosting someone in Budapest. You're managing the tribe from some unknown citadel. It really doesn't matter, right? This is just real time for free Bitcoin flying around from person to person, changing people's behavior, hopefully for the better, but at least figuring it out. It's all for real in this thing.
Right. So this is another reason why people would want to have a home node, right? So having your own node in your home is really a very important part of this whole revolution. And up until now, right? So you can verify transactions. You've got a node, and that's super. And but it doesn't incentivize a lot of people to go out there and get a node. But this sounds like it's going to get a lot of people interested in getting a home node, because it reminds me of throughout history, there are certain technologies that come around for the home that change everything. Thinking about the sewing machine, people would save up for a long time and buy a sewing machine, and suddenly they've got a home factory going. Obviously, the personal computer with Steve Jobs' vision of we're going to put a computer in the home, and that at the time people thought that was completely unnecessary, but it turned out to be revolutionary. So we're at the node, having your home node and hooking into the Bitcoin protocol is really the key adoption moment, I think, because with the Sphinx.chat now, you're talking about two-way economics going on. Your node is profitable. You're connected to the community. All those ideas about individual sovereignty would tie into having a home node. If you don't have a home node, you're not really part of this revolution, Paul.
100% agree. And for me, the part that maybe people missed, and we just got onto this very early, was unless you can talk to each other, borderless, censorship, proof, resistance, if I that's great for commerce, but how do I do that without being able to communicate? And if we're doing all this censorship resistant borderless commerce, if I have to go to phone or to SMS or to email or something to communicate, you're going out of band and losing a lot of the benefits of what the Bitcoin network does and what especially the Lightning Network does. So having this home node and being able to communicate from it might be your own bank. It's sort of like be your own social network, right? Instead of if we were to draw the map of what social networks, okay, Facebook, the centralized systems, YouTube, we all picture it. And we're all spokes on your home phone attaching, and you're having to go through their permissions to see anything and to interact with anyone else, right? Now everyone is their own node, and you can choose through real channels or just adding someone as a contact in Sphinx.chat who you want to interact with. I'm choosing to be in your tribe. I'm paying to be here. You're allowing me to be here. That's a link, right? But I'm my own computer. You're your own computer, and we're choosing to interact on this peer-to-peer network. There's not someone in the middle. It's not Lightning Labs. It's not anyone who's saying, yes, you're allowed to be on this network. You're allowed to talk to this person, but you're not allowed to talk to this other person. So I I feel like it's the right model. And then being able to communicate text and communicate payment creates the traffic is this huge anonymity set. Did this person talk to these people or did they actually pay them? The packet looks the same, right? I can't tell. And there's millions and millions of messages happening, or billions happening around the world. But I picture millions of messages going over this system and no one has any idea what it is. It's just encrypted blobs moving around the Lightning Network.
Right. So you have an incentive. You are paying for the content, and people are going to be like, "Oh, that's cool," because satoshis are fractional, and I can have fun with this. I can have. But the other incentive is the reason you would do that is because now you've got your home node, and now you're part of the network, and you in turn will get paid.
Yes.
Right. So my incentive is equally to consume content as well as getting paid for whatever content I come up with. And so that is very interesting in terms of creating an economy where the incentives are aligned in ways that I don't think we've ever seen it really before, because the structure of these economies is very Baroque, if you will. It's very clunky. It's very inefficient, and the incentives are horrible. And you see people gaming the system from the little bits of garbage spam you see on the internet, right up to major global banks, right? Everything in between. All they do is game the system all day because the incentives are messed up, because the economy is poorly designed, because the incentives are wrong, and there's too much friction. So this seems like it just cuts through all that, Paul.
I hope so. We can cut the middleman out. What we just described, all of those perverse incentives are because they were able to insert themselves into the middle of the conversation because they had the servers and the code, which back in the 90s and 2000s, that was a special skill running the software firewalls. The servers themselves were all aggregated together. And then we all got used to this model that the big centralized system was needed, and we needed to trade our attention for their services. So that's the transaction that we all got caught in. And the person who paid the tab was willing to step up was the advertiser. So advertiser pays big centralized system. We pay with our attention. We receive back these services that we regarded as super specialized. Video is not specialized. Us talking over Zoom, we can do this ourselves. We don't need anyone helping us do these things. We don't need a bank to help us move Bitcoin to each other, right? And so this is taking the exact same mentality of be your own bank and to say be your own, literally be your own stack. And so this home node, what I'm hoping if we can zoom forward a little bit is that I naturally, and I think most people do, even if you're not, privacy is not top of mind every day, you feel the leakage of your personal information with every time you swipe your credit card. I just figured this out the other day and I'm stupid for it, but Google will autofill your credit card into a website when you pay. And I'm like, oh, that's so great. Thank you, Google. And it took me years to say, holy crap, they're recording every transaction, even if I'm not on Google. This is how they're getting all of my transaction data. I am autofilling with their damn card. Maybe they are, maybe not. But I feel like that was this. I'm always on guard. How am I leaking my information unintentionally to these centralized services? So what you said, Max, perverse incentives. They're trying to take, I'm trying to hold back. But if you actually have your own home node and you're training your Alexa is actually not Jeff Bezos running your Amazon device. You have a node that's your Alexa, your Jarvis, and you want this thing to actually get smart and know everything about what you're doing because you want this assistant to help you and be smarter about it. So AI doesn't, and machine learning doesn't have to run in these centralized systems. You can actually run these things on your phone, on your home node. And if you trained it with, hey, I want to do an on-chain transaction when the fees are the lowest, and this wallet is very smart about what you're doing, and it looks at the fee market on Sunday night. Those are the kinds of things I dream about, these channel opening assistants. If you could just loop out for me, that would be great. But I don't want Google knowing that. Hell no, right? I don't want Coinbase knowing my preferences. But my own home node, I am trying to feed it as much as I humanly can so it can help me. And we're not there yet, but that's where I see the home node thing going. And I hope that people install them because they want to do Sphinx.chat and they want to be their own bank. But then down the road, you have people who build these tools, maybe us, maybe other people who are training these things. So
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
Just to digress a bit.
Sure.
We're hearing that there's a global chip shortage.
Yeah.
Is that true? And if so, what's going to happen?
Friends in automotive, my business partners in automotive, for sure, chip shortages are causing manufacturing lines to shut down. So I think that the hardware that we typically use in these situations are not as sought after as those. So it definitely is an uneven shortage, but kind of shocking, right? We've built this very efficient supply chain that turns out to be pretty brittle and vulnerable. So I hope that changes as well.
So going back
Someone
to that,
needs to come out with more hardware options. Go ahead.
So going back to that, the home node, you know, the Sphinx.chat incentivizes that, and thus, again, there's another layer of incentivizing a good citizen, essentially a good citizen of the global community on the online on the internet, because owning and running a node is being a good Bitcoin citizen. And it's also, you're rewarded by being as powerful as somebody like Michael Saylor with 90,000 Bitcoin. You have a node and you are just as powerful as he is with his 90,000 Bitcoin. But also, like, the fact that you obviously reward, you know, talented, artistic, creative, funny, like people who are more entertaining in a room, they're going to attract money and tips. People who are horrible and despicable and project all their inner, you know, their self-loathing, they're going to have fun saying poor because they're going to lose all their Bitcoin, right? This is the model you have set up here. But what about the worst for somebody like me and Max is the imposters. So what about imposter accounts? Like how does that get disincentivized, or has it yet happened?
It hasn't become a problem yet, but if you look at what Lightning wallets really are is you have a public-private key pair with every client. So every bit of content that you send from your phone is encrypted before it leaves, and it can only be decrypted on your device. And so we haven't published this stuff yet, but the link between Stackwork, which is the for-profit side of what we do, and Sphinx, you can log in to websites using your Sphinx app because you're actually signing a private message back to the service. So in terms of identity, you want to know, has this been signed by the person who is associated with this public key? This is what everyone has wanted PGP to be. I haven't used PGP in maybe 10 years or something. It's been a very long time. But Signal, PGP, all the things that people are trying to get people to do actually needs to just be easier. And so Lightning has, and Sphinx already has this built in where you can sign messages. Every time you send a message and receive one, you're actually signing and decrypting the messages. So it's absolutely built in where you can't fake your identity, and it's I think that's going to be a huge part. The interfaces and how to validate, is this person who's on Twitter the same person who's over here on Sphinx, needs to be built, but you could easily validate the same way Keybase does for stuff like that between services. So those are the kind of things we need to build out. But I didn't want to skip your first thing, which is about earning, which is huge. The whole thing of it does get back to this value for value model where you don't have to be a podcast host to be a creator and earn. You could literally write a bot that everybody likes and charge 1 sat per use of the bot. Now that's just someone who doesn't even have to be an advanced programmer, 12, 13-year-olds. It's the same syntax as the Discord bots. So that I feel like is just going to be a blossoming of functionality. I was on a basketball tribe on Sphinx, and we were talking about making a little betting bot where everyone in there is betting by hand on these games. Don't tell anyone. But why not make a bot that takes, hey, what game are you betting on? All right, go ahead and deposit 100 sats on this game or this particular score or whatever. And then it can even be manual in the beginning, but the admin could say, hey, this team won, and then distribute out the sats automatically. So this whole ability to talk and pay is cool.
So like a meme, like the Nigerian funeral meme that went global for 3 or 4 weeks. I mean, if the guy programmed it for just getting a few sats per play, that would have added up to big bucks.
Boom. Jim Patterson, who's a big influence on what we're doing, calls this the meme pool. So this is exactly kind of what NFTs are trying to do. But there's almost this GitHub actually is almost a perfect software for this. You have a tree of hashes. So the person who did the original meme is at the top. Someone modifies it and does something. We use the Bernie meme as an example. Bernie at the inauguration's all grumpy and sitting there. Someone took the original photo. Someone memed the hell out of that thing. And you just want to appreciate the whole chain, right? Whoever got that to you deserves 2 or 3 millisats,
tree
right?
mimics the multi-level marketing
that's it.
Tree, if you will. I mean, the multi-level marketing in itself is not wrong. I mean, it is an established model. The products tend to be kind of dodgy, like health supplements and things like that are usually associated with waste, not great products. But here with this Merkle tree, multi-level marketing, you could take that meme, and you're saying all of the additions to the meme and of course, that's adding another layer of interaction because people are interested to see all those iterations are also interesting, going back to the original. And so it actually expands the life of that entire idea. It becomes part of the cultural artifacts that people are interested in. And I was thinking to Stacy's point about, getting rid of the people who are seemingly incapable of interacting in a social context. I remember back in school, high school, we used to have something called civics class, where it was called civics class, and it was actually a class you would go to every day. And it was, you would be taught about civics, right? What is a civic good?
So you're saying, like, aside from taking their deposit on Sphinx.chat, you could also, to get back in, if they want to come back in and behave, they would have to take a civics class and a bot.
Well, they would be learning through trial and error. Usually what happens if somebody becomes an outcast, and then before you know it, they're shooting up smack and becoming serial killer. But here, it's okay. So they got bumped out. They lost their sats because they couldn't stop flatulating in the chat room. but suddenly they figured out how to control their sphincter, and they're back in the chat. So they become better citizens.
Yeah, because otherwise they have fun staying poor. Like, I guess one day you'll be able to set it per person. Like, if there's a person that's already been kicked out of 35 Bitcoin rooms, like if he wants to enter or she wants to enter your space, maybe you could charge 1,000 sats instead of like 100 sats. Do you know what I mean? Like, there could be a way to just set, like, if you're
right.
A bad actor.
Well, now, to be clear, this is totally decentralized versus, let's say, the China version of the social credit score. Okay, yep. There it's completely centralized and it's ideologically driven, and that would have deleterious impact. But here, because it's completely decentralized and there is no autonomous center to it all, then you have the magic of decentralization takes place. Would you agree with that, Paul?
Yeah, and I would just bring it back to this whole idea of freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, right? I have the right to say, I have a right to assemble with other people based on what we all want to hear and what we all want to say. And I would add to that freedom to earn. Just because you were born somewhere doesn't mean that you should be limited by poor currency, poor policies. Your municipality is not great at attracting businesses. You just happen to be born there. That's kind of, if you can sort of even that playing field, then I think that'll make the world a more interesting place.
Well, I'm super excited by this, and make sure to join our tribe. I'll put the QR code on screen if that works, and it's in our Telegram room. But make sure, because it took me quite a while to figure this out. I went to Sphinx.chat. I went to point number 1. They say download the Sphinx.chat app from the App Store. I did that. And then I started trying to use it and forget, like, reading the instructions. And it took me weeks and weeks and weeks to realize that in order to join a tribe, I actually needed to take step 2, which is the server bit. So yeah, I think a lot of people, based on the feedback I get, like I'll send our QR code out on Twitter and say, join our tribe. And they get that same error where they skip step 2.
The setup, yeah, we don't make it easy. We don't make it easy. I'm going to fully admit that. So, but we will make it easier over time. That's for sure. But and thank you guys for being early adopters on this. We really appreciate just orange pilling so many people. I think I saw your pinned tweet from 2011. I'm going, oh my God, that's amazing. So, yeah, it's amazing. But this hopefully will be the new platform, and people who feel like, hey, I wish I had figured out this other platform. You have to be willing to start when it's 2 people, 3 people, 4 people, and just do it. Just show up, just like you guys do. And that's pretty awesome. I love it.
Yeah. You should really follow up with Sphinx.chat and Paul and what they're doing, because, you know, we didn't have time to get into it today, but there's that whole stack phone coming where you'll never have a digital footprint. There's like this next generation are going to be so lucky, the Generation Z coming on, before they even get a digital footprint tracking everything and tying it to them. You know, it's a new form of freedom that you're offering with your technology you're offering.
I'd love to come back and talk about it. I figured we were covering enough here to not bring up everything, but yeah, that'd be fun to talk about.
Yeah, we'll do a follow-up. This is Cypherpunk.
Right. So I hope your mind is blown, just like had you just dropped some psilocybin mushrooms. That's how I feel right now.
In a lot of ways. I changed my profile on Twitter to include the word cypherpunk.
Right now? Is that like tripping?
Yeah, it's on there now. Yeah.
Wow. Well, I want to say, I'm on that chat. Everybody should join it. I'm going to drop the QR code and all the stuff you need to join. Make sure you follow step 2. You have to make sure you get the server bit, because otherwise you won't be able to follow us. These securing the blessings of our liberty, right? Like, these are the things that we need to do. We need the cypherpunks. We need cypherpunks to build. We need these things to secure, because the Fiat Dark Ages, they're not going to go quietly, right? They're going to go without mindfulness, with huge egos, and their egos are bruised, and they're going to want to shut down everything. We see it, as you mentioned, with Substack. We see them attacking Clubhouse, that the people are able to assemble freely. How dare they? What are these deplorables doing? They need us. Why are they rejecting me? Their egos are fragile. They don't like you rejecting them, and so they're gonna like crack down in an authoritarian way. So if we're gonna secure our freedom to communicate freely with each other, and that includes like the element of the trolls, because trolls are also have very extremely fragile egos, right? And that's their only source of power is to troll and to, you know, disrupt other people's assembly and joy in order to get some attention, some love. They feel that like that's an, you know, some sort of stand-in for love is the hate, right? Because they're so close. So I love his like the whole setup that you can reward positive behavior, like people who bring you pleasure, happiness, joy, and those who bring you unhappiness, well, they could have fun staying poor because they're going to give their Bitcoin to you by you know, farting in the room.
Yeah, no, the incentives are aligned to, let's say, as I was alluding to with that other tweet there, to what is already in nature.
Yes,
And
yes.
so those incentives, when what's been missing is a frictionless environment for incentives to live freely. And what's been missing is a virtually frictionless hard money that's separate from the state and separate from any centralized force. So now we do have that money that's free from centralization, free from the state, in an environment with virtually no friction. So our minds are going to be wandering in this collective unconscious through Sphinx.chat and Bitcoin in a way that will result in a total realignment of all incentives. As you point out, Michael Saylor, with his huge Bitcoin position, really has no greater representation in this economy, in this ecology, than someone with 1/1,000,000th of the amount of Bitcoin, because in this environment, it actually, a unit of having a mind is the standard unit of participation, not the fiat bank account. If you have a working mind, which is, and again, getting back to psychedelia and the probing the mind and the manifesting the mind, implying that being psychedelic can develop unused potential. So the unused potential of the mind is if the minds are completely networked through Sphinx.chat, through Bitcoin, so that we can travel through each other's minds freely. And the huge processing power of the mind, I think the mind runs at like 1 billion hashes per second, the equivalent thereof, calculations per second. It's an incredibly powerful organ that is unused, literally unused. We don't use our minds at all, particularly post-industrialization, where it's all basically rote and symbols. It's all very shorthand. There's no cognitive kind of ruminations on the nuance of life in any way. It's just everything is a hammer blow to the face, essentially, is what we wake up to, an open fire hydrant of useless information that our mind can't even absorb. It's just abusive. It's like 24 hours a day of abuse. That's pretty much everyone's experience, no matter who you are. He's just living in a world of abuse. So this incentivizes the abuse, and it incentivizes and monetizes what you could categorically call love. And so therefore you have an entirely new economic model in it, the metaphysical and psychedelic unleashing of the global unconscious and the unleashing of the individual mind, which becomes less important, the fact that it is an individual mind, because you're eliminating the ego, as it were, and you're having a simultaneous epiphany globally with all minds. What I've been calling the holy dial tone now for probably 40 years. Been waiting for this, as a cypherpunk myself. Stacy.
Yeah. And so, well, you have, that's important. The ego and the entirety of the Fiat dark ages and that space over there, the psychic wounds that you do see manifested across the whole space, whether it's tuning into cable news or online on Twitter, you see the pain, you see it raw across there. And it is a lot of that, that unfair quality to it and the injustice, not only of the Cantillon effect, but the fact that the multi-billionaires can influence politics and outcomes for all of society, right? And we know this for a fact from the studies that show that the ordinary citizen engaged in this democracy have almost no impact at all on the outcomes of the whole political class and the democracy. It's all down to a few billionaires who control everything. Whereas the billionaires in Bitcoin cannot change the governance. They can't do anything to alter the outcome. And that it provides more justice, and justice is a tool to provide harmony and happiness. Like there's less of an ego thing that it's kind of going back to when we were on the gold standard, the days of capitalism developing. And even think of like this notion of having no chairs, or having like selling your car, driving a beat up car, living in the back of your seat of your car, like whatever it takes to stack more sats. I grew up in Connecticut, and there's loads of of those, the robber baron era of America, like huge wealthy families, the Rockefellers, the Roosevelts, all the Tiffany family, all those sort of families. And they always uniquely, I went to school with some of these people. They drove jalopies. They often had huge old mansions, but they had jalopies. They had ordinary clothes. Like there was a sort of sense of a different sort of, that hard money brings that sort of a sort of dignity, and it's a lack of ego, right? There's a lack of fragile quality to them if they're willing, if they feel confident driving a jalopy. But our entire economy now, nobody feels confident driving a jalopy. They feel like they'll be made fun of or mocked or ridiculed, right?
Right. Well, yeah, I certainly have a certain streak of puritanicalism in U.S. Society going back, hundreds of years. And there's a certain frugality that comes with it. Obviously, Warren Buffett is a guy who's been in the same house for 50 years, and he's very, very low-key guy, except for his jet, which he calls, I think the name of the jet is called the Indulgence or something, or the unsubstantiated. He has some funny joke name for it.
Yeah.
But the thing about the people understand how poverty is insidious and undermines the greater good. And they understand why it comes about and how it could be prevented. And yet it's convenient for solutions to be ignored. But what's not talked about too much is that after a certain level of wealth, you have similar detrimental impact on society. And the fact is that most people at a certain class of wealth, when they have absolutely no idea how much wealth they have, because there's nothing you can do with it. There are thousands of billionaires, and there's hundreds of thousands of multi-hundred millionaires. And more than 80% of these people don't have any idea what they're worth. And they don't have any idea what to do with it, because the wealth it exists. Both the extreme poverty and the extreme wealth are both outliers in a dysfunctional economy, and they're both in many, and you find a lot of folks in the extreme poverty range who are having mental health issues, and the same thing with the extremely rich. They're many times you meet people, as a stockbroker on Wall Street, I talk to many wealthy people, and many of them suffer from a deep mental illness because as a result of this surfeit of riches that are the product of a dysfunctional economy.
Well, it's the exact opposite. Like we're saying, happiness. They're unhappy.
They are, yeah.
So what's that unhappiness? And as you're saying, I mean, Aristotle, bringing this all back to psychedelics, I believe Aristotle must have been into psychedelics because, he believed that happiness, okay, I'll tell you, is the highest good because we choose happiness as an end sufficient in itself. Aristotle says that it has to be an end in itself and not merely a means to something else. He concluded that the highest form of happiness is a life of intellectual contemplation. The happy person is virtuous, rational, and active. So he always, the path to happiness is balance. So none of those irrationality, like you're keeping harmony within. Well, I guess as Adam Smith would also say, like he also said, capitalism should be about balance. It should mirror nature. Nature doesn't have many extremes, and if it does, that's closed pretty quickly, right? Mass death or whatever, something happens that extreme situation cannot happen anymore because it causes imbalance, which causes the collapse of that system.
Right. So the Aristotelian notion of happiness, could somebody is trying to, let's say, they're into botany or something, and they're trying to create the certain strain of flower, and they spend their entire life doing it, and in the end they fail. But they lived a very happy life. Versus somebody who's, if I get this Lambo, then I'm going to get love.
Yeah.
So there's a condition to it. It's a conditional immediate gratification. And so, yeah, they get the Lambo and then they don't find the love. So they're unhappy. But they're saying, wait a minute, I got the Lambo. How come I'm still unhappy? So Aristotle would say, because true happiness is in trying to achieve something that in fact you may never ever achieve, and the happiness comes in the effort to try to achieve it, not in the achievement itself.
It's the journey, like we keep on saying, it's the journey. Bitcoin is a journey. You're on a ride. We're on a ride together, and that's a journey.
Right.
It's intellectual contemplation. You, like I said, you see it with Michael Saylor, the dramatic change in him that happened where he's now a philosopher, and so many people become philosophers. They become artists. That's the Renaissance 2.0 happening because the ego dissolution has happened, and the the restoring of the mind, like the contemplating and thinking and engaging and trying to live a virtuous Bitcoin life. Like these are things that they're not outside of you. They're not a car. They're not a fancy blouse. They're not a fancy kitchen. It's not, those aren't the path to happiness. And that's what the entirety of the Fiat Dark Ages tries to tell you and teach you. And that's like,
all right, all your models are broken. So
yes,
if you contrast, let's say, Michael Saylor, and if you follow him on Twitter, he's really, really sensitive to what the community is doing. And he's really, really supportive, right? So if the meme comes around for laser eyes, he's into it, and he retweets people, and he's reaching out to people, and he's just very, very generous, with his time. And you can say that Bitcoin has a lot to do with it, that Bitcoin has a way to bring out this type of generosity in people. Now, contrast that with, let's say, a Mark Cuban, for example, who's a bit of a prick. And that's his public persona. That's the way he acts. That's the way he interacts. So what's happening with Bitcoin, because it's moving the path of humanity in a new direction, it's throwing some people off and some people are coming on. So like a Michael Saylor is on the path, and he's in the path, and he's on the hajj, the pilgrimage with everybody else. And when you're on the pilgrimage, everyone's equal on the pilgrimage. Nobody knows who's got whatever. They're just facing the pilgrimage, Mecca is a
The
good
destination,
right. They're
the
facing in the
end
same
point is
direction.
happiness. The end point is there.
And whereas now we're losing people like a Cuban or a Peter Schiff or Ray Dalio or somebody like that. Those people were on the path before, because we were, as a society, we thought aggregating maximum wealth was the end all and be all, and that was the standard that we had. Now it's changing with Bitcoin, and so these people, all the models are shattered, and now these people find themselves off the path. They find themselves as outsiders suddenly. They can't figure out why. So, the first step toward getting back on the path would be to come to terms with one's ego. Like, why is their ego being damaged? What is it? They have to look at themselves honestly. You have to have a honest look at yourself. And so, in that, for many people, is not ever going to happen. Some people are would rather not ever have that conversation with themselves and go down being a prick, and that'll be their legacy. They were a prick their entire life. They died a prick, and but they had a lot of shekels in between they were born and then they died a prick. They bought a basketball team. The end.
Right. And again, Bitcoin is the psilocybin. It is the LSD. It is the peyote. It is the psychedelic that helps you get to that place. And
because it addresses the innermost sanctum of your mind, and that is the place where you think about money as a means of communication, right?
Yeah,
money is the first means of communication. Money is how we went from being a unit of just a few to being a unit of more than a few, and that took a communication medium. And as Nick Szabo points about in his essay from 2002, The Origin of Money, he talks about reciprocal altruism, and that as we move from having a few tribes to having a bigger community of humans on planet Earth, it was hard to remember that you owed that tribe over the mountain a favor, because you wanted to be reciprocally altruistic. So it was easier to actually give them a token, like a little bead you had spent 30 hours making, and saying, here, I'm going to give you this bead. And when I see you again in 10 years from now, who knows when, you can use this, and I will reciprocate the favor that you've given me. And that's the origin of money, essentially. So now, because it became paper money and everything that's come ever since then, and all the problems that resulted in the Cypherpunk saying we can do better, and resulted in the white paper, and resulted in the Genesis block as a direct result of the failure of the institutions and the industrial powers to sustain a workable money.
In the beginning, the very, very first words ever written down were about money, right? The communication, we're communicating with each other value. And that's been from the very beginning of early human civilization. And we're back there. So as you were mentioning, the path. So we're back on the path. It might have taken 5,000 years, but we're back on the path. And speaking of the path, don't send us, I put us in quotes because it's not us. Underneath this video, you will see fake Orange Pill podcast. They will start emerging and they'll send you the WhatsApp. They'll ask you to call you on WhatsApp. They just want to steal your Bitcoin. Don't let them steal your Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is your psychedelic and a path to a better future. And of course, we need to thank our sponsors for this excellent episode, thesunexchange.com/orange pill. They have a bunch of cool new projects up there. And I think we ought to have another psychedelic meetup with him, do a psychedelic cocktail party online, because, again, just like Sphinx.chat, they just build, they just do. They created a really fascinating model, distributing energy and good times, like to people that were cut off from the electric grid. And using diesel, like spewing stuff, like it's just like a great model that just makes so much sense. And I love that they sponsor the show, and I'm glad they sponsor the show. So and finally, of course, swanbitcoin.com/orange pill. They do accept international customers now. don't go into the comments and say they don't, because they do. They accept via wire transfer. So go to there and if you know, just start stacking, man. That's the beginning of the journey. That's individual stacking. That's just, you know, dropping, you're microdosing the Bitcoin psychedelic.
As Confucius said, the longest journey begins with the first stack.